Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Data Standard Audio Experience. I'm your host, Catherine Tao. Today, we have Terrence Head, the managing director and founder of Outlier Global Solutions and board advisor to finance, lobby, and AI data innovations. And today, we're speaking more about the post COVID industry challenges. So, welcome to the show, Terrence. I'm excited to have you on our show today.
I am too. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, definitely. Could you tell the audience just more about your background and maybe what led you to your role today?
Yeah, so I started off about 20 years ago in the defense and aerospace industry and the intelligence community, doing various projects, large scale projects, and customer facing engagements. Around 2014, I started Outlier Global Solutions, which is a professional services company. We provide expertise in business transformation, enterprise architecture, program project management, system integration, and system engineering. I'm also an advisor to Finance Lobby. We have a mission to modernize the way that commercial real estate operates. And I'm also an advisor to AI data innovations, where we address the pain points of curating data for machine learning and other AI efforts. I'm also a board member on the National Society of Black Engineers Process Improvement Special Interest Group. And there I serve as the finance director. And mostly I enjoy coaching and mentoring professionals and working out and hiking and just being me.
Yeah, that's awesome. We all know that COVID has really impacted, especially industry work and a lot of people working in a lot of corporate settings. And a lot of companies had to kind of just switch from an all in-person company to be completely remote overnight, all of a sudden. And so, how has this really impacted your company and the team and the people that you work with? Was it an easy transition, or were there any challenges that you and your teams had to face?
Yeah, so it definitely wasn't easy, to be frank. My clients are either a professional services organization where their product is their people, or they're in some type of manufacturing facility, and it's been challenging on both ends. And so we've adopted just a new leadership model is needed, and the old way of putting on a suit and going into a room and wargaming with your client is just not going to get the job done. So being effective post-COVID era is going to be challenging, right? So you can't co-locate with your clients. And a lot of my clients are really trying to figure out, why do we need all these buildings and real estate? Is it required to collaborate and to be productive? And so mainly we're focusing on collaboration hubs and activity centers for our talent to be engaged with the client. And there's also a new talent model that says, how can you be successful in the manufacturing environment while health and safety is premier and security constraints limit all of that, right? So the new culture in being global and being accessible 24 hours a day, needing feedback from someone in India or Australia is a complete new way of doing business. And so those are some of the challenges that we've had to overcome.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of challenges that are coming up, even with this upcoming transition to going back to work life post-COVID also. And specifically for executives like yourself, what are some challenges that you're facing with this new transition of going back into work life after COVID? Because a lot of companies are kind of thinking about different ways they can maybe adopt more of a hybrid model of having some people come in person, some people work remotely, and some are working remotely, some are just going completely back to work. So, what are your thoughts on this, and what challenges are you facing as an executive?
Well, as an executive, our main responsibility is to produce and solve problems. We're not necessarily have a track record of dealing with crises, or a global crisis at that. So before the pandemic, everybody had a personal routine, everyone had a professional routine, and we had structures in place to maintain both. Now we need a new set of structures so that people can find their footing and to be productive in the workplace. And we have an in-depth responsibility for the health and safety of our teams, having some safe and healthy check-ins, making sure that people are okay physically and mentally. Right. And with all the social changes and challenges that we had of 2020, they're not going to go away. So having engaging roundtables to discuss these social and racial issues in our communities helps as well, right? And so a new leadership model to develop communication channels and have a feedback loop to our talent, a new model of not being a headquarters general where you're in the ivory tower and you're sending out orders and you're leading from the back. You have to be a trench general and be down on the ground with your talent and lead from the front, and supporting work-life integration versus a work-life balance, because some people's work life is going to be very different for people that are married or have families and have children, and people that don't. And then also, I personally have adopted a new way of coaching and mentoring professionals on being a servant leader versus traditional leadership. In the past, leaders mainly have focused on the production or the profitability of their organizations. And that's all fine and good because that's why we go to work. But that's not an opposing force to being a servant leader as well. So it's critical to be a servant leader to serve the people that you lead and the people that you come in contact with. So to me, that is the new leadership model that's going to be required post-COVID.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I really like how you kind of worded all of this. It's important for these executives and these leaders to really be working closely with the people that you're working with on your team instead of just kind of giving orders around. So I think that's a very good way of explaining the situation as well. As I had mentioned, there's a lot of other companies thinking about what is the best work structure for their businesses and their teams that they're working with. And in your opinion, what do you think is the best work model for, or the best work structure for your specific company in terms of a hybrid going back to work model, an in-person model, or being completely remote and just continuing what you're doing today?
You know, it varies. In some cases, a completely remote work model is just as productive as going into an office. In some cases where you have to have people on the floor producing something, you have to have some sense of a hybrid as much as possible model. And so I think a hybrid model, to the extent that it's possible, is required. But even if you are going into an office or if you're going into a manufacturing facility, healthy and safety and being mentally prepared to go into the work environment is critical. And if you have those things as a minimum, then people are optimized to outperform on their objectives. And in order to do that, you have to build your talent up from the ground with safety first, and to ensure that their home life is sorted in such a way that they can feel good about the work that they're doing. And so enabling your talent to work remotely with the technology that's needed, and putting in an effective operating model so that all these things can come together so people can collaborate in isolation and coming together.
Yeah, and I really like how you pretty much are emphasizing the importance of just empathizing with the people that you're working with and really understanding that everyone has faced a lot of challenges with COVID-19, with a lot of illnesses in their families and just a lot of crazy stuff happening. So it's so important to really understand people at a personal level, of course. So I think that's really important and great that you were able to also kind of emphasize and really hone in on with the people you work with. And how do you kind of envision the world to look like post COVID, both economically, socially, or anything that you want to talk about there? I'm sure there's going to be many changes. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I mean, eliminating any safety risk is critical, right? So people want to feel safe in the environments that they work in. And then using data to rethink the capacity for people to work in the offerings of your business, whether you're a service-based business or a product-based business. And supporting a global client base and workforce that works from home is where we are. And so from a product-based business perspective, everyone has to focus on a shorter value chain. You know, you can't have too many gaps in your value chain for manufacturing, right? So we have to shorten those. We have to focus on the people, the process, and the materials that it takes to be productive. And the pandemic exposed weaknesses in all of that. And so in the future, we have to operate in such a way that allows for our disruptions to be minimized while we have a level of operations to produce and manufacture and operate. Supply chain networks, capacity, the requirement for a shorter value chain, and meeting those demands and productivity and logistics all have to be worked out and on the table in order for us to be successful. And another key is having these daily check-ins with people to make sure that if they're in the office or on the shop floor, that they feel safe and that they are safe. And then, of course, giving people the opportunity to have work and life integrate together, ideally.
Yeah, and so I also wanted to just talk about things that are outside of your work and all of the technical things that you're doing, and just talk about any hobbies or interests that you were able to pick up either during the pandemic or just anything that you have been doing for fun, like exercising or cooking or anything like that. Is there anything that you'd like to talk about?
Well, I've had to be creative because my whole social life and existence really changed. But I think it changed for the better. I started professionally. I started looking at AI and ML and cloud security because I think that that's going to be critical in the coming decades in terms of how we work and how businesses are successful. Personally, I found new ways of working out. I have been doing some cooking and I've been doing a little bit of hiking too. So it's kind of hard to do all that with a mask on. But to the extent that I've been exposed to the changes, I've tried to modify my new routine so that I could be safe.
Yeah, that's great. And it's always great to kind of stay in shape and try to get fresh air while we can, since we're just always in front of our laptops doing work. But yeah, that's awesome to hear. And I wanted to say thank you so much, Terrence, for joining us today. It was a pleasure to have you on the show. And we at the Data Standard, we're trying to build a community where everyone could just network and collaborate with each other. So what is something the community could help you do?
Yeah, so I would love for the data science or data enthusiast community to do one thing, and that's to always focus on the ethics of data science. For whatever project or engagement that you're working on, there's always consideration for the ethics of harm that a project could potentially do. And what type of accountability procedures do we have in place for that, and some oversights. And also to focus on the inherent biases that we bring into the workplace or into an engagement that we may be working on. So, for example, there was a near infrared technology that was implemented in some of these automatic dispensers for soap and sanitizers. And it was found that according to a person's pigmentation, these dispensers would not put out soap or sanitizer. So a person like me, which has a darker skin as compared to Europeans, I may go to wash my hands or I may go to sanitize my hands and it just wouldn't work. Now, I don't think that was an inherent or an intention of the design, but because people didn't consider different hues, that was the outcome of it. And so there are biases and sometimes even racial biases that are encoded into some technologies. For example, in the UK, a constable in Durham was using something called the Heart AI system, and it was used to predict crime. But the AI and the algorithms had to be retooled because it was unfairly targeting poor people. And another study by ProPublica was found that predictive AI programs were unfairly targeting Black people. So there are unintended outcomes that may result in profiling or misidentification or literally keeping people from being safe and healthy in some of the engagements. And so let's remove biases and be considerate of those as we put our intentions into the DNA of some of these innovations.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's so important that more people should be discussing is the ethics side and the biases side of data and how we're building these models, definitely. And where can everybody find you online just to connect with you?
Yeah, so I'm in a couple places. I'm on LinkedIn. That's my first name, middle initial, and last name. So that's TerrenceRhead on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. That would be my first name and last name with the at symbol at the beginning. And my email is terrence.head@outlierglobal.com.
Yeah, perfect. And to our audience, for more information on the data standard, you can find us at www.datastandard.io, as well as on our LinkedIn and YouTube channel. Thank you so much, Terrence, for joining us. It was so great to speak with you today, and I hope to speak to you again soon.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.